a lot to talk about, a lot of good stuff. I think probably the most positive news to talk about in a long time, which is good. I think the past like 6 months, I mean, even I guess technically since even Lightfall, it's been a lot of gloomy news and a lot of just not great outlook. So I think most of us had the belief that Final Shape would be good, but now I think probably the best news we've received in a while.
I got to echo what you're saying about the change in sentiment too, because if you exist online terminally, you can really see the headwinds change of everything.
Yeah.
I think it's really clear from the start too. Bungie needed to elevate the game, they needed to evolve it, and they really needed to absolutely blow us away. And I think that there are some things people could potentially have predicted for Final Shape, such as, say, a new enemy faction or race to face off against. But there are some things that absolutely no one was expecting, and it's all of these, all wrapped up in a bunch. So, yeah, that has absolutely raised the bar, and I think that's what they needed to do. So, yeah, great news on that front. I'd say the community is mostly setting the course for positive sentiment right now, and that's really nice to see.
Yeah, I think very unanimously. I mean, across YouTube comment sections, Twitter or X, Reddit, which is can be quite rough, and has been even like Instagram comments. It can be rough. It can be really rough. Like when, especially in what was it like October, November, around the layoff time. Like that was hands down the, like, no exaggeration. Like we've seen this community and online sentiment for the whole decade, so we know we've got a good gauge. That was the worst. It was just like, Bungie cannot do anything right, and they were just it wasn't good.
I don't think I've seen sentiment that bad since Curse of Osiris, and it feels definitely like it was worse than Curse of Osiris.
Yeah.
And that's saying something, because Curse was the last time when the franchise really felt like it was lost. Like completely screwed.
And that was before they even announced the Final Shape delay. But we all knew from the like leaks and like was it Jason Schreier, like the insider articles that came out that were also talking about their revenue and like the player retention issues and just all kinds of issues. And then I've also heard a lot of sentiment. A lot of people are saying about how like back against the wall Bungie is the best Bungie. How when Bungie is like really forced to, as I think like you would hope they would be, when they're under pressure, they do seem to, like we've seen it with Destiny 1 launch, obviously a great game, but just lacking a lot of areas, a lot of criticism. And then what was it, Dark Below was, I think if you're a hardcore player, it was seen as good, but then after House of Wolves, it kind of like faltered a little bit, and then Taken King blew everyone away. And then Destiny 2 launched, the same thing, Curse of Osiris, and then Forsaken blew everyone away. Beyond Light with the whole vaulting and sunsetting, not good times. And then Witch Queen comes back. So it's kind of like this, every time Bungie is in a really rough spot and like players aren't happy, they do seem to always pull it back. So it seems to be kind of like after Lightfall, which was quite mixed and criticized, and after all the layoffs and Q4 last year, now seems to be like, again, that pattern of good times, and Bungie's recovered. So if you give them enough time, they do seem to be able to recover. But it's definitely been a turbulent, strange time.
Turbulent times. I will say this as well. I think it's also down to... I'm going to harp on about this point, which I think I've harped on about a bunch, which is that we, as a community, need to stop thinking of Bungie as one group, if that makes sense. We need to firmly divide Bungie into the group of executives at the top who are making lots of the important calls about whether something goes or doesn't go, versus the actual developers day by day. I think overwhelmingly now, especially with the layoffs conversation and the revealing discussions that have happened after that fact, it has become very clear that lots of the hindrances that have put Destiny back have been due to management failures. And there are moments where developers make mistakes, inevitably, but it's much easier to make mistakes when your timelines are screwed because you've been put under pressure in another manner. And it's a lot easier to make those errors and those mistakes on a regular basis if management is bad. So there is the point where we need to separate that discussion. I think you're right at the core of it, though, because, when they're backed into a wall, the executives are reminded yet again that they don't necessarily know best, and that it's actually the core developers and the players who know what they want out of the game. And that, I think, is where some of the best stuff gets made. Like, they sat back and took the hands off the reins, allowing the narrative team back in the days of after Beyond Light to create the content they wanted leading up to things. And we got Witch Queen and the seasons that preceded it. To this day, I still praise Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, the Witch Queen launch. These are some of the best story moments that we've had, and it all comes out of pressure, but I think it also comes out of letting the devs cook and not getting in their way. The moment you try and interrupt it, it screws the whole process. So, like, yeah, no, they just got to let the devs be devs, basically.
They've been cooking.